Oh wow, it's been a while since I've made a video. Working 7 days a week keeps you quite busy. But there is no better time to get back into autistically breaking down games and saying controversial things that upset everybody than with Dying Light: The Beast. I have eagerly awaited a new Dying Light release since the absolute travesty that was the second game. Oh, I know they went back and updated things. Many people commented about it on my video, which I still don't know how that got so many views. God damn. Either way, I gave up on 2 because much of the issues with that game, fixable or not, were things that shouldn't have even happened to begin with. The first game I hold in a very high regard, and so with this new release, I was cautiously optimistic, hoping they return to their roots. Well, it's been out for a while now, and I finally got my chance to play through it. And if you couldn't tell by the title of the video, I am not a fan. The second game was a massive disappointment to me, because I saw its potential and knew what could have been if they just hadn't made such strange choices to backtrack on things that worked just fine. This time, they didn't do outlandish things like not having volatiles roaming at night or anything, but at the same time, I feel they still misunderstood key aspects of what made the first game so iconic and amazing. It's made me think a lot about game development in general, because Techland aren't the only ones that do this. For some reason, it's become so normal for developers to fail at things when they have literal blueprints for success in front of them. I don't know the consensus in the game, whether people like it or not, because either way, this game just pisses me off. Normally, I like to start with the story of a game, but this time I'm going to do things a little different. I want to start with a look at some of the comparisons of The Beast and the first game. Ultimately, there's 2 main concepts that I will focus on here. I'll say what they are in a few moments, but let's take a look at the talent trees as a jumping off point. I talked about this in my video on the second game in a different way, but it's about how we gain experience to level up. In the first game, the talents are split into 3 categories: agility, power, and survivor. The talents give things related to those aspects of the games, and to level them up, you have to perform in relation to those categories. Parkour will give points to agility, fighting will give points to power, while quests and objectives will give survivor points. Let's look at how it works in the Beast to compare. There are 3 talent trees, technically 4, but that one is its own thing. We still have the 3 related to agility, power, and survivor. However, experience is consolidated. Players will only have 1 experience bar to level up. On paper, this should be fine, simply a different approach, right? Well, to a degree, yes. There is nothing functionally wrong here, but the problem I have is more complicated. The first issue is how little experience is gained. Killing a zombie can earn a player like 15, maybe 30 experience points. The amount of experience required to level is in the tens of thousands. Killing zombies isn't even going to put a dent in the experience bar. Even killing a volatile during this quest, I got like 100 experience points, which means I would have needed 300 volatile kills for a single level up at this point in time. You can get experience through other means like surviving a chase at night, but even that is nothing in comparison to quests. Quests or objectives like safe houses will earn many thousands of experience points in one go. It's very clear that the intention is to level up through quests and objectives. This is even more apparent when you notice that you don't get experience for parkour. Look back at the first game's talents. By having each tree build up separately, it allows the progression of that tree to be balanced individually. The amount of experience needed to level up agility could be adjusted if needed, and not affect the others. More importantly though, almost everything you do will progress you in some way, shape, or form. It makes the game feel extremely rewarding to play. Exploring an area, securing a safe house, or just beating the crap out of zombies, you will always be progressing your character. This leads into the first main concept that I want to talk about: incentive. When I say incentive, I mean just that. The motivation for a player to put their time and effort into doing it to begin with. For some, the basic incentive of playing the game is enough. But in general, we want our time to be more worthwhile, so we should be getting something out of it. Otherwise, why wouldn't we do something that we are getting something out of it? In the first game, there is basic incentive to everything. No matter what, you will be getting something out of it. Even the simple action of exploring still pushes your character forward. Something catch your eye? Go check it out. Want to see how high you can climb? Go for it. Encounter an enemy? Might as well kill it. Maybe you'll have fun knocking it off a building. Maybe you'll find a random encounter in that new spot you explored for some survivor points. The first game's experience and talents are about emphasizing the player to just play the game. Paired with its world that is virtually completely open from the start, the player is never without incentive to engage with the game's mechanics. In the Beast, we have lost the most basic incentive. Parkouring doesn't provide any experience. This isn't Assassin's Creed, where the parkour is part of the stealth and opens up assassination kills. The parkour of Dying Light is one of its biggest gimmicks. It's the primary way how the player engages with the world, and in many ways even the enemies. The various ways the player has to approach situations becomes hollow. The effort that it takes to quickly scan an environment and try to figure out which way to go and efficiently scale it is suddenly a chore rather than something I want to engage with. Instead of trying to do more complicated parkour, I will just take the path of least resistance. I'm just going to beeline to objectives instead of messing around and engaging with the world. In 1, I'd often purposely take obtuse routes just to parkour more. But now, if I have to climb a big tower for something, I sort of don't even want to bother. I mean, half the time I don't even bother climbing rooftops. I completely ignore everything around me because none of it matters. None of it provides me anything. This might seem very insignificant to you, but it changes how I want to approach situations. I can imagine some people are thinking that I am being very nitpicky, or that I am being really unnecessarily critical here. But what I am highlighting here is more how something small can go a long way, and why one system is so perfect for the game it is. Look at the Assassin's Creed example I just used. The parkour in those games is used to accomplish a goal. It allows you to defeat enemies and clear objectives. But why go through all that effort if you can run in and kill everybody anyway? Well, an assassination is usually an instant kill. You take more effort for less risk to yourself and the reward of instantly taking out an enemy. This is even more apparent in a game like Sekiro, where enemies are significantly tougher and more time-consuming to fight. Taking time to set up an assassination can feel good or rewarding because you took an alternative route to circumvent that challenge and preserve resources. That's why I don't think it's a nitpick kind of thing here. The parkour of Dying Light is one of its major gimmicks, and what sets it apart from other games. We should be encouraged to engage with it on a deeper level, not just be forced to go through the motions. But it goes the same for combat too. While you gain experience, it's a pathetic amount. You aren't getting anything done by fighting enemies. As much as it's fun to knock zombies off rooftops, you might as well ignore them. If it isn't for an objective, the best thing to do is just ignore it. That is, if you even want to do the objective. One thing I did like about Dying Light 2 that carried over is the idea of dark zones. Areas that are in darkness, and thus have more variants of zombies, and can simulate the nighttime at any point. But what is the incentive to tackle these? You do get supplies and gear, I suppose, but is that really worth it? Like, why did we need gear with stats on it again? This isn't a fucking RPG. I don't give a fuck about 3% more damage to zombies. Oh, that dark zone gives me materials I can buy at a shop and some irrelevant gear? Guess I'll fuck off. If I was leveling my power while I did it, you know what? Why not? Because it'll still push me towards new abilities if I don't like what I get. Maybe it'll be a cool cosmetic at the top of that building. But even if it isn't, at least I'll push my agility while I do it. But all of it isn't there anymore. Funnily, this affects nighttime gameplay. It was baffling when I didn't see volatiles roaming around in my first night of 2. I was happy to see the night instantly be terrifying and full of danger here. But very quickly I realized, if I'm not getting experience for virtually anything I do, why would I go out at night? A big incentive to going out at night was double experience. It was much harder and scarier, however you could level up faster and thus power up faster. But I'm not gaining experience for my actions. So what purpose does nighttime have? It's scary as fuck, but for the difficulty increase, I don't see what reason the player would have to deal with it. Especially when on normal difficulty and higher, you will lose experience for dying. So it's doubly risky, because if you want to do a chase for some experience, but fail, you will be behind. At least in 1, when you lost experience, it was only for the survivor tree. Your progress for power and agility was safe. The more I played The Beast, the more I appreciate the first game. which is exactly what happened when I played 2. The first game just does it right. It has the exact formula for success. So why are we taking away the things that work? Why are we fucking with things you know are getting the job done? A sequel shouldn't be foregoing the aspects of its predecessor. It should embrace them and add to it. Like, even abilities are more awkward to use. I remember it being similar in 2, but let's look at the dropkick. In the first game, it's jump plus 1 button press, but here it's jump plus 2 button presses. Why? It's just more awkward. This leads me to my second concept, simplicity. I think simplicity is often looked at negatively, as if some things are worse because there is less to it. But I think that simplicity is a good baseline, as in the foundations of a game should be simple. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has a very complicated combat system. It leads to confusion and fans openly admitting to not properly being able to fully engage with the system for dozens of hours, often over 50, before starting to understand it. Meanwhile, Left 4 Dead 2 is incredibly simple and basic in its systems and remains one of the most replayable games to this day. At a base, the tools that a player has in Dying Light 1 are simple and easy to use. Take the vault jump for example. It is one single button press. When sprinting at a zombie, one button press will let you do it. But for some reason in the Beast, in order to vault jump over zombies, it requires you to dash. So you have to sprint, then activate dash, which requires and drains your stamina bar, then you can vault jump. Why need this middle step? Why make it more cumbersome? What does the player gain from this? You can even mess up like I did and get the jump talent before dash. Now, I admit I should have read the ability more closely, but at the same time, I didn't expect the game to let me get the ability that requires another ability without getting that extra ability first. Again, unnecessary complications. I also didn't realize at first that you can do many of the abilities at base that required talents prior. I only figured this out when I did them by accident, because the game doesn't make it apparent the long list of skills you do have. I find it interestingly odd, too. Like, they let you do skills at base that were considered advanced prior, but we need to lock a vault jump behind another ability? What the fuck are we doing? I think they should have done it the other way if they had to do it like this at all. The easier and simpler abilities are at the start of the tree in 1, and thus allow players to get acclimated to the game. You will unlock more and more tools, but as those tools get more complicated, the player is able to engage with them in the way that they want. Simplicity. The player can choose how in-depth they want their experience to be, instead of being shoved right into the deep end. Simplicity is what lets players begin to engage with the content. It allows players to ease into it. They've just approached the game from such a weird angle in almost every way. I just don't get it. Speaking of not getting it, why are we doing level requirements on areas? Why are we arbitrarily time gating content? In 1, the moment you unlock the map, you can go explore the whole thing. Which is the same for the second area too. Like, you can just fuck off and explore in the tutorial. The world is a playground, which goes perfect with the systems of the game. But now we have to wait to get to certain areas because reasons? Why? Just why? There is no reason why areas need levels to them, especially when you are going to have areas scale with the player anyway. It's like they desperately want this sense of progression to say, see, look, you got stronger and can access more areas. But that progression is gone when the areas that should get easier just get bumped up to match you. Just let people play the way they want to. And while on the topic of areas, am I the only one that hates the fact that half of the map is essentially empty land? I had the same problem with the following DLC. Why make a game focused entirely around parkour and fast-paced movement, only to take all of that away? Like, this is what more than half the map is. It's to the extent they even give you free vehicles all over the place, because they had to know traveling this all on foot is boring as shit. They still have to incorporate the parkour into places even when there is barely anything there. It makes a lot of objectives, like safe towers you find, feel like little puzzles rather than natural parts of this world that you are utilizing your unique skills to get into. It further devalues the parkour aspect of the game when they have arbitrary little obstacle courses to jump through in the middle of a field. Is it not simpler to design a world that fits the gameplay you created? You made the setting of the first game a city because that is where parkour is going to get used the most. Like, the second game did exactly what you'd want from a sequel. They put you in a bigger city with huge buildings. If they just didn't have the stupid idea to tie stamina to parkour as well, Villador would have been an awesome place to explore. All of this just makes me frustrated. I can very much tell that the developers are desperately grasping at what was once there, desperately mimicking the things that came before, with little to no understanding of why they worked so well. The atmosphere of the game is where I'd point to this the most. Dying Light 1's atmosphere had two distinct parts to it. The first being the overall aesthetic and sound of the world. The world was actually quiet a lot of the time, but that meant you could hear it all. You would constantly hear quote-unquote distant noises, like a bottle falling or something like that. Sometimes you'd hear the distant sounds of a struggle. It all created an environment that kept you stimulated, constantly thinking that something may be behind you and that danger was around every corner. Additionally, it made the world feel active in a horrifying way. Like, you knew some bad stuff was likely taking place out there, and you're gonna have to go into the middle of it. And that is just during the day. Nighttime spoke for itself, being pitch black and the streets being littered with the worst of the worst. The game didn't need to try to be scary, it knew that it was. But of course, this is misunderstood completely in the Beast. The developers have tried so hard to scare you. Instead of letting the world speak for itself, they constantly play creepy noises and sounds. Even running through a field, you'll have these almost prompts to remind you it's a scary experience. Often walking into a building will get a scary sound effect, but I've had this happen even when I was going into a safe area. The icing on top, though, is the jump scare zombie grabs. They are littered throughout the game. Spots where the developers very clearly want you to get scared and jump from the zombie attack. But they are also so fucking blatant, it's actually insulting. I saw this in a main quest where I needed to get gas to lure out a special infected. Well, I could tell with my survivor sense there was a zombie behind a wall, and figured there was a regular one near him as well. So I tossed out a distraction to make a noise, and it lured the regular zombie, but the viral didn't budge. I realized that they must be tied to a trigger, rather than just being a normal enemy. The developers want you to get jump scared. They want you to have a big reaction, so they specifically force enemies to not respond to anything until you get to their trigger. Funnily enough, I managed to kill the zombie from range with a throwing knife, but I can still very clearly see the strings the developers are pulling in a desperate attempt to jump scare the player. You can often see these moments coming. You'll sometimes see a zombie crouched on the floor and know it'll pop up for the grab. But they don't want you to interact with it at first. Pointing the UV light at it doesn't do anything, and if you run up and kick it, nothing will happen and you'll be attacked anyway. They are specifically coding these enemies to be dormant until you hit a certain point and they turn on. An egregious example of this came in another main story quest. I climbed on a roof to get a better view of where enemies might be, and when I peered through a window, I triggered one of these jump scare grab events. Except I was on the second floor, so I watched as the zombie lunged forward for the grab, and they even played a sound for it, just for it to fall flat on its face. The other side of this is the soundtrack. One soundtrack is this interesting blend of techno and horror. The techno beats pair really well with the fast-paced parkour. More than that, the techno gives a unique sense of intensity, sort of encouraging you to be active in a way. But there is always a backdrop of suspense. There is always seemingly a threat looming. Even though it gets you ready for action, it never lets you forget the dangers lurking around the corner. It culminates in such a unique and unforgettable soundtrack. Meanwhile, the best way I describe the Beast soundtrack is generic. It often takes the beats of the first one, but there is none of the techno style in there. often it is very particular in its feel, very direct. For a game titled The Beast, I suppose it fits the rage and intensity behind the character, but it loses all of its charm in doing so. The contrast of the techno and horror sets a very unique tone for the game, but this doesn't even push the horror aspect. There is no subtlety or depth behind it. It's just the intensity. It's just so basic. It continues to baffle me how developers can miss the mark so consistently. I don't think these things are particularly hard to accomplish either. Just don't try so hard to circumvent the solutions you already have and know work. However, I can safely say that the story part of the game is safe from all this. They didn't try to mimic the first game and not hit the mark at all. Instead, they went with the incredible daring idea to not have one to begin with. Alright, I guess I can't say that. It has something that vaguely resembles the hollowed outline of a story. One of the more common criticisms I've seen for the first game is that the story is generic. Just like simplicity, I don't think that generic is a bad thing. Quick pause. When editing this, I realized I should clarify myself here. I just called the soundtrack generic, and now I am saying it's fine for the first game's story to be generic. I can see how that might come off hypocritical or biased. But I just want to emphasize that I am not saying the Beast's soundtrack is bad, and not that being generic is its problem. What I wanted to point out was that something was lost. Obviously, music is almost entirely subjective, but I still felt that they could have done it better based on previous work. I hope that helped explain my point of view a little bit better. Back to the topic at hand. Even if Rise was basic as hell, he did his job getting us on board with Crane and rooting for him. We saw his internal struggle to follow orders versus helping people, and we saw his growth into fighting for what was right. Crane was an awesome protagonist to follow, and I think everybody was excited to have him back. But where were we going to go with him? Crane's story was left up in the air at the end of the following, so we could do just about anything, right? If your answer was to make him a hollow shell that has virtually nothing to do with his past character and is on a bland revenge quest, then you'd be right. I wouldn't have guessed it myself, probably because it's fucking retarded. The game starts with Crane giving a recap of events. We learn Crane was captured after we saw him last, and has been getting tortured and experimented on for over a decade. Okay, so we aren't going to explain how he was captured or what even happened to him in general? Well, we technically do get some explanation, but it's in the previously on Dying Light on the home page, not the actual game portion. This is incredibly odd, as many people like myself aren't going to naturally click on that. I played those games, I don't need a previously on. But in that other recap, Crane recites how he was hunted by the GRE for many months to even years and eventually got captured. But this recap is also really weird in multiple parts. He gives credit to Jade for saving his life, and then we get this specific mention of Spike and how he was a brother to Crane? Since when? Spike was a chill guy, but we did not see anything even remotely close to a bond that strong between the two of them. I wonder if that's going to come up in this game at all. Crane then says the GRE lied and dropped him into a nightmare. Dude, what? You talk about detailed knowledge of the outbreak in the first game. Buddy, you knew what you were signing up for. Then he explains that in stopping the GRE, he lost everybody he cared about and then went to go hide out in the countryside. But that's not what happened. What the fuck are you talking about? Crane lost several friends, but not everybody. Spike, his supposed brother, is alive in 2. Brecken, Dr. Lena, these people weren't dead at the end of the game. Which is the point of the following. Crane didn't go to hide. He went there specifically to find help and medicine for those in the tower. Then he finishes by explaining that GRE chased him for up to several years, but this also doesn't make much sense. Dying Light 2's intro explains that the Haran virus was contained and done. It's hard to believe that Crane, just being a random half-turned zombie running around all over the place, didn't lead to anything. This whole recap is just wrong in so many ways. It isn't a good sign for a story when they are altering so many details about the previous game. I didn't watch this recap until I was very deep into the story of this game, but boy does it rub me the wrong way. There was no reason to make it seem like Crane was a dick and ditched the tower to go hide instead. Well, back to his other introduction recap. Crane is ready to die, but first wants to kill the guy responsible for torturing him, the Baron. Some sort of mad scientist, of course. And that is the plot of the game. No, I am not kidding. The entire game is just Crane constantly trying to kill the Baron. As comically garbage as the second game's story was, at least it tried to do something. We truly live in the darkest timeline. But even though it's so bare bones, it doesn't stop it from being filled with peak retardation. So we're gonna go through it anyway. Shouldn't take too long, right? There is a small moment where two people try to rescue Kyle but are subdued. Then Crane manages to escape because some infected guy gets loose, and some random chick who works there, named Olivia, guides him out. Kind of weird that they put the new test subject directly next to Crane. Pretty convenient. During the escape, he goes beast mode. Essentially, he's still infected, but when he gets too much adrenaline pumping, he goes feral. Once out of the facility, Olivia guides Crane to a mansion in the woods, where he finds and must kill a chimera. These are juiced up infected that act as bosses in the game. Crane can get a sample of their blood to power himself up. Crane passes out and has a few flashes of Jade from the first game. I wonder how all of that has affected him, like how all of his efforts failed and the world still fell. Oh, wait, we aren't going to talk about that? Well, shit. Well, Olivia is going to help us get stronger using chimeras and tells Crane to go get allies so he can take on the Baron. Now, I have to pause here to talk about a weird stylistic choice they made. During various cutscenes through the game, the camera goes into third person, meaning we see Crane's face. This doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but part of the stylistic approach to Dying Light is its constant first-person nature. From the moment Crane jumps out of an airplane, you are always viewing things from his perspective. The player engages with the story through Crane, and allows for a unique kind of immersion. It also let the developers do something really neat, where quests would seamlessly go from player control to cutscene back to player control. But by cutting to third person, it breaks this seamless transition. We see Crane and then bop back into first person all of a sudden. I just find it weird, especially when almost everything else in the game is still in first person. Other games do stuff like this, but because the previous games tried really hard to keep you in first person all the time, it feels weird for a Dying Light game to do it as all. Anyway, the main story has Crane flopping back and forth between trying to help the locals in order to get them on his side and hunting chimeras for Olivia. And by flopping back and forth, I mean exactly that. You do a mission or two for the locals, and then the game decides it's time to fight a boss, so Olivia sends you to fight a chimera. Then back to the locals, then back to a chimera. Instead of flopping back and forth on topics, I think I'll just talk through each side individually to stay coherent, starting with Olivia. She wants to study the chimera's DNA, so it's a benefit to both of them to hunt them. As more chimeras are defeated, we return to Olivia for her to exposition dump something for us. Initially, she learns that Crane's DNA is also mixed into the chimeras. Crane is supposedly a human volatile hybrid. Now, to my understanding, a volatile is still a human, but just with a mutated version of the infection, so I don't know how you can be a hybrid. Either way, the Baron wanted to use Crane to make Ultimate Infected that he can control as a weapon. Olivia also learns that her father was the lead scientist that worked on Crane, and was even the one who brought him into the Baron. Her hope in helping Crane escape was to potentially also rescue her father if possible. Outside of the research information, she's usually trying to calm Crane down. She wants him to get stronger and defeat the Baron, but Crane is much more reckless and impatient. That sums up this entire half of the main quest. There is very little actually going on all the way until the end of the game. Interestingly, on the wiki it says that according to a quest designer, Olivia was written to provide depth to the game's central theme of revenge. Olivia remains vulnerable and compassionate despite enduring tragic experiences. Her presence highlights alternative ways of enduring the harsh post-apocalyptic world and offers a narrative counterbalance to Kyle's darker impulses. That sounds nice. Quick question though, where the fuck was any of this? A counterbalance to Kyle's darker impulses? The most Olivia does is tell Kyle he's not ready to fight the Baron yet. She doesn't provide alternatives to Kyle's perspectives at all. Probably because Kyle doesn't even have a perspective to begin with. He's just got one setting the entire game: kill the Baron. He doesn't talk about the experiments, what he went through, how he felt, what it's like to be part monster. He talks about fucking nothing. I truly have no idea what the fuck they are talking about, especially since Olivia doesn't even talk about herself that much. Unless they mean the notes you can read throughout the game, to which I'd say go fuck yourself if you think I'm wasting my time with that. Don't tell me there is some depth to having to stop engaging in a product to read about something else. Hey, I know you were enjoying this movie, but we're gonna pause it so you can read this pamphlet about the character's past. Fuck right off with that. Those kinds of things should be supplemental. They should add to it, not be the story. If the story itself can't provide the storytelling, then it has failed as a story. From the direct story we are shown, Olivia isn't a character. She has no personality. She has no defining qualities. She is there for exposition. I love the part where Crane is talking to Olivia in a car in the woods, and he says he has lost too many friends already and doesn't want her getting hurt. I love this because, for starters, he has lost a lot of friends. But instead of us delving into that topic as everybody would like, we just throw out a line and call it a day. More importantly, though, these two are not friends. There is nothing between them at all. She just points him towards chimeras. I find it intellectually insulting how they want to piggyback off the first game, but don't dare even touch it for real, and then act like these two cardboard cutouts are anything resembling characters, let alone ones with a strong relationship. And yeah, I am pretty fucking pissed about Kyle in this game. I absolutely loved Kyle in the first game. He's a great character, and his voice actor, Roger Craig Smith, is phenomenal. Smith's performance, along with the presentation of the game, is what made me form a strong respect for voice acting. So it is pretty annoying for me to see that they are essentially using Crane for nothing more than bait to get you interested in the game. The sheer amount of potential that is wasted or ignored for this pathetic, vapid, hollow running simulator is infuriating. For as much as 2 failed in its story, I will give them the credit for doing something of their own. Aiden is his own character on his own journey. If you can't or have no intention of engaging in an established character's history, then don't make them the fucking main character. Then we have the other half of the main questline involving the survivors in the area of Castor Woods, a place in the Alps. As I talked about earlier, a large portion of the map is more or less open land with this one section of city. The locals in Old Town 2.0 are in Tower 2.0. It's led by generic leader lady called the Sheriff, with her sidekick, Jacob. We are over a decade into the apocalypse. Are we going to learn about how these people survived? Are we going to explore the people or the culture of the area? You should know by now. Of fucking course we aren't. I call it Tower 2.0 because it's like these people are just like those in the tower. People who have only just entered an apocalypse recently. There isn't evidence of these people having gone through years upon years of surviving. Villador had custom-built towns, and they were utilizing the city's infrastructure like subways to navigate as you'd expect of people who had been living there for years. Meanwhile, these people seem like a ragtag team, people who are just winging it, and just happen to have established a safe spot for themselves. It's so boring. Oh, and I don't count the random lines that the NPCs say to you, because they spout nonsense half the time. The moment you are allowed in there, NPCs start saying how the Baron is going down since you are after him, even though Crane hadn't mentioned anything to do with the Baron at this point. But Crane does chores for the discount tower, getting power turned back on, even tracking down the beast infected guy that broke out at the start of the game. There isn't really a whole lot to say here. Not much really goes on. I can't help but think about the cast we previously had. Brecken is a natural leader, but the burdens weigh heavily on his conscience. He gets extremely angry at himself for not being able to save lives, but in that frustration, highlights how he helped people and how his otherwise pointless job of being a parkour instructor actually taught people how to survive. Raheem is young, impatient, and impulsive, but kind-hearted. He is playful, but wants to do anything to pull his weight. It is clear that he holds being a team player in high regard, and is desperate to be seen as helpful, even to his own detriment. Jade is naturally somebody who takes charge. Likely from taking care of her brother, she steps up quickly to look after those that need help, not hesitating to save Crane. She doesn't let her emotions show often, despite being heavily implied to lose somebody very close to her. Dr. Zera is a clearly dedicated but overworked man. He hides in his camper, not being seen too often, but pushes himself endlessly to find a cure for this hell that was created. He is seemingly forgetful in little things, likely due to exhaustion, but still deeply caring. Even after everything, his final words are him thinking only about saving the people of Haran. Even characters that aren't at the forefront of the story are distinct characters. Their qualities and quirks show they are individuals. The same can't be said for the Beast. The two are just opposites of each other. The sheriff is strict and Jacob seems more open-minded, but Jacob folds to the sheriff, citing that it's been heard that's kept them alive. So there is no back and forth or discussion of approach and ideas. They are just sort of there. Sheriff is rough around the edges and says it's been tough, but we don't get anything like Brecken. We don't get any insight into those kinds of things she's done, the decisions she's made, or the weight on her shoulders. There is even a scene early on when meeting them that another person gets infected. Sheriff's rules are if you get infected, there is no middle ground. They have to be taken out. Crane protests, and even Jacob doesn't like the idea, but there is zero real pushback. The dude just shoots himself in the middle of their town hall like a total douchebag. The NPCs are even cleaning up and complaining about it the moment you regain control of Crane. What is this shit? Crane's entire purpose in interacting with them is selfishly to get them to fight the Baron. He, unlike with the people of the tower, doesn't eventually break down his walls to help them because he wants to and it's the right thing to do. So these guys are really just here to be plot devices or exposition. After helping the sheriff a little, she agrees to watch the Baron's movements, but then she betrays Kyle and lures him into a trap. This betrayal holds no weight, because the sheriff is not only not a real character, but has done nothing of significance to show that she was even on Crane's side to begin with. She appreciates his help, but only agreed to observe things to essentially return the favor. But the game acts like it's some massive reveal when I couldn't care less. Hilariously, this also showcases how the Baron isn't a character either. This trap is the first time we even see him since the brief moment in the introduction. The whole game is about stopping this guy and we never see him. Even if Waltz was a mustache-twirling villain, at least we saw him. I don't know how they expect anybody to care about this guy when he's just some background name that we never see. Of course, when we finally do see him, he's even more mustache-twirling than Waltz. Mad scientist cliche to the T. Seemingly, the entire Old Town group is there to eventually set you up with the real group that Crane deals with to get stuff done. There are a group of survivors that are infected and were exiled from the Old Town. These exiles are holed up in a cave on the other side of the area and are telepaths. You heard me right, they are telepaths. How is that possible? Well, because they are infected. Infected individuals can become telepaths to other infected. Who the fuck wrote this? Holy mother of mercy, we have gone off the deep end with this one. The virus creates variants by mutating the body. Muscle mass increasing or morphing the position of bones wouldn't be far-fetched. We have many conditions in the real world that affect these kinds of things, just not to such a degree. But telepathy is an entirely different thing. This isn't a morphing of the body, this is sending thoughts and brainwaves to other people across vast distances. It makes no sense whatsoever that the infection could possibly allow for this. Oh, but we saw it in the following. Okay, it was stupid there too. At least it was isolated to a hyper-specific character and not fucking anybody and everybody. So, we have telepathic infected humans. At least they are infected, so there's a bit of tension there. Like, we saw the residents of Villador go through a ton of effort to stay human despite their infections. These exiles couldn't possibly just have bright blue eyes and live in a cave with seemingly no precautions to anybody turning or anything like that. Oh, come on. How hard could it be to explore, like, even one thing to have any sort of depth to these characters whatsoever? Well, we abandon the townsfolk at this point, and Crane basically just deals with the exiles from that point forward. Their leader, Lydia, isn't on board with Crane being there because she doesn't want to attract too much attention from the Baron. That lasts all of about one cutscene, and then jumps right on board the very next mission. After listening in on the Baron's communications, they liberate a scientist of his, Camilo. He believes he can enhance Lydia's telepathy to be able to control the other infected. At this point, I've completely checked out. They don't give a single fuck about the integrity of their story, so why should I care? They send Crane to fetch samples of volatile flesh, forcing him into a volatile nest. Really quick, anybody else find the pacing really odd that there is a chimera right before getting to the nest? It seems so random. Like the game is forcing you into a dangerous and scary environment, but is like, wait, you should fight a random boss first instead. Wouldn't it have been better to swap the order? Run through the nest, narrowly escape the regular volatiles to find the big boss. Maybe it's just me? Oh well. After that crazy mission, Lydia starts to develop her powers. But they need drugs, which are held in a nearby insane asylum. Now, I'll admit, this quest was sort of interesting on paper. The whole mind-controlling infected is beyond retarded, but the basis of the mission is neat. Once entering the asylum, it's very fucked up, with many volatiles. Everything is passive, so you have to slide between all the zombies without touching them, otherwise everything would become hostile. It is by far the most atmospheric spot in the entire game, and goes all out on the horror aspect. Unfortunately, from a gameplay perspective, it's really dull. It isn't a real stealth mission. You aren't hiding or performing takedowns, so you aren't engaging with enemies in any way. You are just waiting on their rigid and repetitious video game patrolling behavior. The mission has you going back and forth all over the asylum, but it's just a ton of pick up this key to open this doorway, etc. They of course force you into a chase at the end where Crane has to jump out of a window, but I can't help but feel like this would have been way better in like a movie rather than a game. It reminds me a lot of the apartment building quest in 1. That area is a lot slower and fucked up, but you are still constantly fighting enemies, so it keeps you engaged. Just wished there was a little bit more to do in this mission. Well, afterwards, Crane meets up with the two again. But wait, the Baron is attacking the townsfolk. This is so out of nowhere, and it happened once before too. The Baron tried planting bombs underneath the town hall, and now they're just blatantly attacking it from the front. Why? Because why not, I suppose? Evil villain does evil things? After the fight is over, Lydia sends a chimera to just fuck off somewhere. Because that won't ever cause anybody problems for any poor innocent people and will just be fine roaming the wilderness. The sheriff and Lydia see each other for the first time since the exiling. Lydia says they survived in spite of the sheriff, to which she apologizes. Then Lydia forgives her and they move on, to which Crane agrees. The sheriff straight up sold out Crane and he's like, nah, it's cool, despite moments earlier sounding violently angry. It's like they are allergic to having any kind of character conflict. The Baron's the bad guy. We can't have characters challenge each other or disagree. That would be silly. This story is a dumpster fire, and they are only going to pour gasoline on it here soon. Now that the gang's all here, they devise a plan to fight the Baron. The first step is to capture the beast. They lure him into a cave and beat the shit out of him so Lydia can use the telepathy to subdue him. Back at their main cave, they wake him up to find it's Aiden. Yep, Aiden from the second game. And wow, he looks absolutely nothing like himself. I glossed over something from the earlier part of the game to talk about it now. In the introduction, there's a scene where two people attempt to save Crane. One of them is Spike. Although he doesn't look the greatest in the scene, so when I first watched it I wasn't entirely sure if I was correct in who it was. But the second person is Aiden, and since he looks nothing like what he used to look like, I sort of dismissed the other one as Spike. Regardless, that scene is how Aiden was captured and turned into the Beast. They tried to rescue Crane, but failed. Well, sort of. Technically, Aiden did lead to Crane's escape, just not how they thought it would go. More importantly, this also means that Spike is still captive at the Baron's, and has been there the whole game. I can't help but think back to that recap of events. They made it a point to have Crane point out Spike, calling him a brother. At this point, it is so unbelievably obvious what is going to happen to him, but let's act like it isn't for the time being. Just as Aiden is revealed, the Baron phones in to tell us he has Olivia. He wants Aiden back or else he will kill, well, everybody. Of course, everybody decides to fight back, but Aiden decides instead to be a dumbass and go back by himself. The group still decides to fight back, and they invade the Baron's castle. Crane enters through a secret passage and opens the way to the final conflict. Everybody fights against the Baron's men, and they seem like they can't do it. A bunch of randoms die, and somebody from Lydia's crew is killed as well. The game thinks it's an impactful moment, but the guy was just essentially a quest giver. They didn't do anywhere near an appropriate amount of effort to expect me to care about any of these people. Like, it isn't an exaggeration. When you meet him, you save a few of his extra men, then he gives you a quest, to which then you deal with Lydia for the rest of the game. You barely know anything about this guy. Oh well, Lydia then summons a pack of runners that swarm the guards and give them a chance to push forward. Crane pushes into the compound and finds Aiden. But oh no, it's a trap. I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked. Looks like Olivia was really working for the Baron the whole time. Crane awakens at a big dinner table where everybody else is also captured. Spike is there, along with the Dr. Camilo? Where did he come from? He wasn't in the attack. Okay. Well, the Baron starts going on a villain monologue. He's so smart and the bestest, yada yada yada. And then he kills Spike. Would have never guessed that would happen. Isn't it such awesome storytelling? They bring back this older character for 15 seconds, then proceed to never show him again for the entire story until the very last second, and then kill him. If you didn't think they were trying to leech off the older game at this point, I don't know what else you'd need. What the fuck was the point of having Spike here at all? It's for pure shock value, to kill off a character you knew, except it's complete bullshit. The Baron then moves on to the Doctor. Lydia somehow influences him with her telepathy, which I thought was only for infected, but I guess she can do whatever the writers want. Who needs consistency? Don't ask questions, just consume product. Anyway, Baron slams her head into a table and kills the Doctor. Olivia at this point protests, trying to get the situation to stop. He then tells her to kill Crane with his gun. She says her father was infected and they needed to work for the Baron to help him, but she turns the gun on him and oops, it's empty. Lydia does another telepathy attack because the Baron didn't kill her immediately after the first attack for some fucking reason, giving Olivia a chance to stab him in the eye and then begin freeing everybody else. Pretty sure she could have just turned around and killed him, but we need the final fight, so whatever. She tells Crane she was always on his side and just needed the right moment to jump into action. This is retarded, because she captured Crane when he was about to release Aiden, which would have been the perfect opportunity to not capture him and then wreck the compound together. But she had to do this because we not only needed to have a cop-out betrayal from her, but we also needed to kill off two characters to try to make this all have some big weight to it. It's fucking embarrassing. Well, everybody gets loose and we chase the Baron. Cue the boss fight. Eventually the Baron injects himself and turns him into a big giant zombie monster. And wait a minute, isn't this just the plot to a Resident Evil movie? Big mansion, half zombie, half human hero, and a villain that works for a secret evil organization that turns himself into a monster at the end? Seriously, replace the GRE with Umbrella Corporation, and this is just a plot to Resident Evil. What the fuck? Oh yeah, the Baron worked for the GRE, because of course he did. Of course the GRE is still around as some shadow organization pulling the strings. In the first game, the GRE says they want a cure, but is corrupt and wants to weaponize the virus. Considering Haran is essentially destroyed, but also the city is successfully quarantined, I don't think it's a far-fetched idea that this big organization thinks that they can control the outcome of using it as a weapon. But, by this point, we are way past that. The world fell. It was an apocalypse. What secret weapon are you trying to have? What are you trying to accomplish? Everything is fucking gone. The Baron's plan that he spouts out at the last second was to lead a new breed of human, volatile hybrids, and is just as dumb as it sounds. So if the GRE is trying to do something like that, then I really do think they just wanted to make a Resident Evil game, but couldn't, and forced it into Dying Light. I think they are using the GRE just because that's what existed before, and are trying to use some more of that bait. There's a helicopter at the very end that contacts Crane, and it's literally the woman contact he had from the first game. What are the fucking odds that not only did that one woman survive, but is in this specific helicopter to talk to Crane? Oh my god, this is so ass. Then the game ends with Crane, Aiden, and Lydia standing on the cliff in a pose that clearly wants them to be seen as the future team. Sure, I guess. And that's the game. When I started playing the game, I was pretty happy with things. I felt like it really did return to its roots for a moment, but it did not take very long for the game to drop off. Hard. I was maybe 8 hours in before I put the game to easy mode. I know, how could I commit such a sin? I just didn't care. I wasn't about to die for some dumb reason like not grabbing a ledge right and falling to then lose a bunch of experience and get to a point where I needed to grind hundreds of zombies to get it back. You can probably tell this script started out with me being pretty tame. I was initially just disappointed and felt like there were things the developers missed yet again that should have been easy wins. But the more I played, the angrier I got. I didn't even talk about a lot of the weird things in this game, like how zombies will just load into cutscenes and make things look really weird, or how human enemies don't draw attention of zombies literally several feet away from them for some reason, or how the zombie AI will sometimes have them walk right into UV lights to their death. I get it though. I can see why somebody would enjoy this game. The game is unbelievably gorgeous. It's not hard to get lost in the serenity of the landscape. The movement is smooth, and the physics is bonkers in the right way. Oh, and the way the zombies break apart is insanely cool. Punching one after a grab can sometimes knock their jaws off and stuff like that. It's not like the game is functionally broken like Cyberpunk was at release or anything like that. If this was the first game in the series that you played, I can see you having a great time. However, if you played the first, I can't imagine how you could possibly enjoy this. This game is an insult to the first. One that tries to bait people in with it, but absolutely and completely ignores it to do its own thing. It blows my mind that 2 games in a row only accomplish making the previous more appreciable. I truly do hate this game.